Well, it is some good news from the medical world. Cancer deaths continue to drop, and that is in part thanks largely to fewer smokers. The American Cancer Society reports mortality fell to 26%, down nearly 2% from the previous year's estimate. That decline is a trend that began back in 1991. The deadliest cancers remained lung, colorectal, breast, and prostate. And joining us now to go in depth on those numbers and what they mean and what we can do to hopefully prevent some of these cancers is Dr. Ali Kazrain, who is a urologist by trade. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. Kind of noticing some of those numbers and looking at some of the ones that are not going down. The deadliest cancers still remain. I shouldn't say not going down, but of the deadliest cancers, lung, colorectal, breast, and prostate.
Yeah, these cancers are going to remain in somewhat of these orders, and you know, lung cancer still remains up there in terms of cancer deaths for both men and women, and smoking. You know, the one thing that people can take away from today's segment is going to be quit smoking, and don't start smoking. And secondhand smoke can have impact as well to people around you. And that's an important thing to take away, because not only for lung cancer is smoking a risk factor, cervical cancer, bladder cancer is an association with kidney cancer. There are many cancers where smoking is a risk factor, and it, you know, cardiovascular disease, it's just not a great thing for any aspect of your health to begin doing. And if you are smoking, stop.
Stop. There's no good reason to be smoking.
It's hard to quit. So just doing that is not the easiest of things to do. So get help. Talk to your primary care physician, engage in the process of quitting, and you have to want to stop. You know, it's not an easy thing to try to quit. And also the people around you, if you're around a lot of people who do smoke, it's very difficult to quit smoking. But engage in that. That's probably the best thing you can do for your health, because you know, still about 40 million Americans smoke, and it accounts for about 1/3 of cancer deaths.
Let's talk about the deaths that we're seeing, and which ones where I was talking about a second ago. Where I lost my page. Prostate, colorectal, and lung are, when we see those are the deadliest, but we're still seeing the numbers going down. Is that because of treatment, or is that because we're doing things to ward off? We know more about how to prevent these, or is it a combination of both?
So it's a combination of improvements in our treatments, but also early detection.
Okay.
So a couple things that they looked in the statistics. They found that overall there was about a 1.5 decrease annually in death rates from cancers for both men and women. Interestingly, when you broke it down, incidence of cancer for women stayed relatively stable. For men, it went down about 2% annually.
Why do we know that? Why do we know? Why is that?
So interestingly, for men, it was the fact that less men are smoking, so less men got lung cancer.
Okay.
Other thing, there was a decrease in incidence of colorectal cancer in men because more men are getting colonoscopy. So it's interesting that men are beginning to do some of these things, where usually we criticize men for not engaging in their own health care. The other thing that's really interesting for me as a urologist, which we talk about prostate cancer and prostate cancer screening with this lab test called the PSA, prostate-specific antigen, very controversial screening test. So in 2012, the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force made a recommendation against prostate cancer screening with a grade D recommendation. In 2008, it began the initial conversation and initial what's called a draft recommendation against prostate cancer screening. When that came out, we began to see a decrease in screening by primary care physicians, and so that decrease in PSA screening translated into less diagnosis of prostate cancer and therefore a lower incidence in prostate cancer. So before there was about a 230,000 prostate cancer on this same study that came out, 230,000, 180,000. Now in the past couple of years, it's been in the 160,000 range. This year, it'll be 164,000. However, the amount of people who died of prostate cancer kind of stuck around in the same area in the mid to high 20,000s. Last year was 26,000. This year is 29,000. We've seen a decrease in incidence of prostate cancer by about 10,000 a year. Doesn't mean that the cancer is not there. We're not finding it. And we're beginning to see a stage migration, so higher incidence of prostate cancer in the more advanced stages, higher risk disease, metastatic disease, or advanced disease. And so we're beginning to kind of study that to see what we can do to kind of change that shift migration while being more responsible, so that we can be more appropriate and not over-treating and not being irresponsible in that regard, but being appropriate for treatment.
Isn't testing prudent, though? Shouldn't you be testing testing to?
Absolutely. The way I think about this is that if you are diagnosed with a cancer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to overtreat cancer that doesn't need overtreatment, but it's the right treatment for the right guy at the right time. Missing cancer that could be treated appropriately is something that is a difficulty here. So with this, we have to take this information, which the American Cancer Society, this data is fantastic because it can allow us to be smarter. And we've seen since 1991 to 2015, there's been a 26% decrease in cancer deaths, which translates in about, like we were talking about, 2.4 million lives saved.
Which is a blessing. We need so much more, though. So much more
it's
room to
amazing.
go. Yeah, but it is hopefully steps in the right direction.
Things to take away from this: don't smoke.
Yes, okay.
Don't start
Yep.
smoking, try to quit smoking, get screened, and be appropriate in having discussions with your physicians if you are diagnosed with cancer, with having personalized management options that fit you, of whom cancer is one part of your life. So you're appropriate so that you don't overtreat cancers that don't need overtreatment, but you also don't avoid treatment by not getting screened because you're afraid of the treatment.
Right, because there are more options early on
Absolutely.
versus later on.
And again,
okay.
quit smoking. You know, that's the one thing that you can do. And these studies and things of this nature show us that. Because again, 40 million Americans, 1/3 of cancer deaths that are completely preventable.
And that is the truth. We're learning so much now about what is preventable, you know, what we can do on our own, and you can take simple steps. Well, not really simple, as we said a second ago. It is difficult to stop smoking, but to get help to do it, because it's the number one thing you can do.
Take the first step.
There you go. Good to see you, Dr. Kazryan.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you as always. For more information, you can always head to Dr. Kazryan's website, which is KazryanUrology.com, or you can listen to him and call in live to his radio show with questions, which is called The Conversation. It's on 690 AM WOKV. It airs every Saturday starting at 5 p.m.